The day he returned to her street, the sky hung low and gray, as if the world itself remembered what had been lost there. 5 years had passed since his name last echoed in that narrow lane. 5 years since pride, silence, and unspoken pain had torn two lives apart. He was a millionaire now, a man whose face appeared in magazines and business headlines, yet as his car slowed near the old, peeling gate, his hands trembled like those of a broken boy returning to a forgotten home. One simple gesture he carried with him that day would shatter a silence that had lasted half a decade, and neither of them would ever be the same again. Before the story unfolds any further, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human compassion. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. 5 years earlier, he had walked away convinced that success would heal everything. Back then, he was an ambitious man chasing dreams bigger than his means, working endless hours, missing dinners, forgetting anniversaries, and slowly replacing warmth with distance. She had tried to hold the marriage together with patience and understanding, but loneliness has a way of eroding even the strongest love. When the final argument came, it was not loud or dramatic. It was cold, exhausted, and final. He left with a suitcase and promises to return when things were better, never realizing that sometimes leaving is the one thing that cannot be undone. Success arrived faster than he ever imagined. New deals, expanding companies, and growing wealth filled his days. His name became synonymous with achievement, yet every celebration felt hollow. At night, alone in penthouses overlooking glittering cities, memories of her quiet strength haunted him. He remembered how she used to wait up late with a simple meal, how she believed in him even when no one else did. Fame could not silence the guilt that grew heavier with each passing year. Meanwhile, her life had moved in the opposite direction. After the divorce, she stayed in the small house they once shared, not because it was comfortable, but because it was all she had. The silence he left behind became her constant companion. Financial struggles replaced emotional ones, and she learned how to stretch every coin, how to smile despite exhaustion, and how to hide her pain from the world. She took up multiple jobs, teaching during the day and sewing at night, her hands often aching but her resolve unbroken. Neighbors saw her as strong, but they did not see the nights she cried quietly into her pillow, mourning the life she thought she would have. Years passed without a single call or message between them. Pride stood tall on both sides, reinforced by hurt and misunderstanding. He assumed she hated him and she believed he had forgotten her entirely. Yet life has a way of bringing unfinished stories back to the surface, especially when hearts are still tied by invisible threads. The decision to visit her did not come suddenly. It grew slowly, sparked by a charity project he funded in struggling neighborhoods. While touring modest homes, he saw a woman who looked like her from behind, bent over a sewing machine. The resemblance struck him like lightning, awakening memories he had buried beneath boardroom victories. That night, he could not sleep. By morning, he knew he could no longer hide from his past. The drive to her house felt longer than any journey he had taken. His expensive car looked out of place among the worn-down homes. As he stepped out, he noticed how the gate squeaked the same way it used to, how the old tree in the yard had grown taller, but still leaned to one side. Time had passed, but not everything had changed. She was inside when he arrived, sorting fabric under dim light. Life had etched lines of fatigue on her face, but her eyes still carried the same quiet kindness. When she saw him standing there, disbelief froze her in place. 5 years of silence crashed into that single moment. She said nothing, and neither did he. Words felt useless against the weight of everything unsaid. He took in the house, noticing the cracks in the walls, the worn furniture, and the absence of warmth that once filled the space. Guilt tightened his chest. He realized how completely he had failed her, not just emotionally but practically, leaving her to rebuild alone while he soared. Then came the gesture. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his coat and placed a thick envelope on the small table near the door. It was not thrown down carelessly nor presented with pride. It was laid there gently, almost reverently, as if it carried his heart inside. Inside was not just money, but documents transferring ownership of a property he had bought nearby, along with a letter he had written and rewritten countless times. He bowed his head slightly, not as a powerful man, but as someone asking for forgiveness without demanding it. That simple act broke something inside her. For years, she had convinced herself that she did not need anything from him, that independence was her shield. But the humility in his posture, the sincerity behind the gesture, shattered the walls she had built. Tears welled up, not of greed or relief, but of long-suppressed grief finally given permission to breathe. Memories flooded her mind. The early days of their marriage, shared dreams, whispered hopes, and the slow unraveling that followed. She realized that while he had abandoned her physically, she had carried the weight of their shared past alone. His return forced her to confront pain she thought she had mastered. He did not try to explain himself at length. His eyes spoke volumes of regret. He had come not to erase the past, but to acknowledge it. He knew money could never repay lost years, but he hoped it could ease the future she had struggled so hard to survive. Days passed after that visit, and silence returned. But it was different now. It was no longer heavy with resentment, but thoughtful, reflective. She read his letter slowly, absorbing every word. He wrote about his failures, his loneliness, and the realization that success without love was empty. He did not ask her to come back to him. He simply wanted her to know she had never been forgotten. Gradually, her life began to change. The property he transferred to her was modest but secure. For the first time in years, she slept without worrying about rent or bills. She reduced her workload, allowing herself moments of rest she had long denied. Strength, she realized, did not always mean enduring pain silently. Sometimes it meant accepting help when it was offered sincerely. For him, the visit marked a turning point. Wealth no longer defined his sense of worth. He began to focus on meaningful work, supporting causes that uplifted people quietly, without cameras or applause. He learned that true success lay not in accumulation, but in accountability and compassion. Their paths crossed occasionally after that, not as husband and wife, but as two people who had grown through pain. There were no dramatic reunions or fairy tale endings. Instead, there was mutual respect, understanding, and a peace that came from closure. Just before the ending, I want to ask you something important. Please comment below and share your thoughts on forgiveness, second chances, and whether you believe people can truly change. In the end, what broke her silence was not the money, nor the power he had gained, but the humility of his gesture and the courage it took to return without expectations. It reminded her that even broken stories can find gentle endings, and that kindness, when offered sincerely, has the power to heal wounds time alone cannot. If this story touched your heart, moved you, or reminded you of someone in your own life, please like, share, and engage with this video. Your interaction helps spread messages of hope to others who may need them today.